Catherine.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Just FYI, it's already recording.
All right.
So, because I want this to be very like unproduced. Like it's just our conversation that people are getting to like be a fly on the wall for.
I love it. I love it. Sounds good.
How are you? I'm
I'm
talking.
doing well. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, how are things with you?
I mean, that probably not the way I expected them to be over the last couple of weeks, but it's honestly been a ton of fun, to tell you the truth. Like I've been able to do some other stuff and talk to a billion people and not the way I saw like 13 years ending, but it happens.
Wow,
So
13 years. Yeah, yikes. Is
it
it
was surprising.
I
It was,
mean, I've been there. I've been there unfortunately a couple of times. Yeah, once early in my career and one as recent as last year, unexpectedly.
well, I mean, I would love to hear about it
Yeah.
if you're ready to talk about it. I imagine the wounds have healed a bit since then anyway,
Oh,
so
100%, 100%. But yes, the wounds are a real thing, Jason. I will say, I think that's the most humbling piece about it. As strong as you want to be on the outside, on the
yeah.
inside, you go through all the emotions, right? You really do go through. I think if you look at like how we process, a death or a loss, you really do go through those emotions. And I think one of the things I have learned in my, I think, more mature years
Yeah.
is it really is about sticking to who you are, believing in yourself, like be true to yourself. Because sometimes those organizations that may have said, hey, this wasn't a good fit for you, or we don't think your position's needed here, that isn't something necessarily to take personally, and know
Mhm.
that you may show up better somewhere else. Right. But yeah, just being true to yourself and knowing like your own worth is
Yeah.
really, I think, what. But again, I didn't know that in my early years. I was only gosh, this was back after 9/11. I was with United, and I think we all knew that the timing back then, during, after
Yeah.
the course that our country, was faced with back then, and a lot of companies were downsizing. But
So
because we were one of
that
the
had to be early career for you then, right?
very early career, I was probably a good maybe 4.5 years out of
Yeah.
undergrad. And so I was new. I was, small fish in a very big pond. At that time, we were doing our succession plan for United. I got to be a part of that team, and I got to bring all the leaders from around the country, the globe, into Chicago. And the date of our review of the plan and doing some talent calibration was September 11th, 2001. And coincidentally, because we had all the leaders in for this big meeting for the succession plan of the company, everybody went to the crisis room. And days, it's kind of a blur, the days and the weeks after
Yeah.
that. For me, it was short lived. It was only 2 weeks. So even though I was being promoted and I was leaving that position, they froze all promotions and transfers. And by the end of, I think, that second week, I was furloughed or laid off.
Yeah.
And man, it was like, what am I going to do? And not having enough, on my resume. It wasn't deep enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't thick enough. And I was sort of like, now what? And you feel so low. You're like, I am the lowest of the low. I can't, what am I worth? What am I going to do?
Right.
And so I ended up, um, deciding at that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get my master's. And so I've got the time. And yeah, I did. I applied to jobs here and there, and I had a couple of interviews, and I would always be a finalist. I was never like the candidate. I was the finalist. And then I ended up getting into grad school and was excited. I felt like, now here's some value. Now
Yeah.
I feel like this is where I should be. I loved
Um,
it.
what was the actual like application process and stuff back then compare, because now it's like
Yeah.
LinkedIn, easy apply and
Oh
just all this
man.
other stuff. But like what was
That's
that
a
like?
that's a great question. Yeah, I remember that sales job that I got. It was literally, I think, an ad. Um, it was an ad I found on the internet, and I think I had to call a number, and then they called you in, and then I kind of had an interview, and it was 100% commission. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
So they were like, "We'll take you, whoever." I don't even think they did a background check. I mean, I
Yeah.
could have been some weirdo. But anyways, ended up, yeah, calling a number, and then I and went the old fashioned route to a Pier One Imports was the store I thought I shop here a lot. I might as well see if they're hiring, get the discount, right?
Yeah.
So I did. I filled out a paper application at the desk, and I think they interviewed me on the spot, and I was hired. And they're like, "When can you start?" And I was like, "Now."
Yesterday.
Throw me an apron on right now. I will work this register like nobody's business and sell candles and pillows. But I did that. I ended up getting a job at Pier One. I was
Yeah.
going to grad school. But then the cool thing happened. I mentioned about like how you exit a company
Yeah.
in a situation like that. Well, it paid off because United ended up calling me back. Oh my gosh, it was about 9 months. Now we're about 9 months after I was laid off,
Okay.
and they said, "Hey, we have this special assignment for you, and we thought of you. Would you be willing?" And this was back in a department that I started in. And I was like, really? Out of all the people? Like, wow. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah, that
Um,
is.
I accepted, and they were like, we'll bring you back in at the salary you had before you got furloughed. And I said, that's fine. At that point, I was like, I'm starving. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably better than what you were making at Pier One. So.
It was pretty close back then. And anyway, I ended up keeping the Pier One job, working back at United, and went to grad school. And then I ended up spending a total of 10 years with United, after all was said and done. So I think feeding into my next, and who would have thought this would happen again? But this was a company that I decided to join only because I knew the brand, and I was, kind of ending up my time at this other company that I spent 5 years with.
I think we knew each other by this time, right?
And
When this
we
last one happened? Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did know each other. We were on the board together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic, good times. And so I was interviewing, I was applying, found this other company that I had known the brand. And the interview, I remember the interview being like really laid back. And it was
Yeah.
such a different like spin on what I was used to that I was like, I kind of like this. I think I'm okay with this vibe. Well, that was the vibe the entire time I was there. It was so laid back. It was a little bit, um, people weren't necessarily allowing me to kind of do or bring the talents that I,
Yeah.
bringing
That
to the
makes sense.
company. Unfortunately, the manager that hired me, she left after me only being there like 2 months.
Tough.
And
Yep.
she carried the vision of that position. She carried the passion for where that was going to go. And ultimately I found myself in situations that I would be challenged, and I was sort of like, why is that a challenge? Like if I said to you, hey, we're going to work on, we've got this change management initiative, you would know what I'm talking about. I had people in that company looking at me like I had 8 heads. And I was like, that this is a common thing. Okay, all right. So then I was like, is it me? Do I really need to change that much of who I am? Um, well, anyway, I think they did me a favor by saying, you know what, this, we're done after today. This is not, this is not what we wanted for this position. And sure enough, they got rid of the position, which also ultimately got rid of me. Was I mad? Yes. Was I
Of course.
shocked? Absolutely, because I had no idea. Again, I had solid performance, got bonus, was incentivized, no red flags
You
anywhere.
were there for a year and a
It's
half, basically, right?
just over a year, yeah, like a year and 2 months. So,
That part where you said they did you a favor is kind of one of the things like I've noticed for myself. I was definitely at a point like over the last probably year or so, even at Echo, like where I was like, you know, if I'm still doing this 3 to 5 years from now, whatever, like, am I really going to be like super happy? Like I was comfortable. It was a great spot. I built up a great team, like all those things. But at the same time, like I also knew, and the writing was on the wall that like my career was basically capped there.
okay.
Um, so it definitely like when I say, even though I haven't like landed that next opportunity 100% yet, um, it definitely was probably also kind of a push I needed to like get out
Mm.
there and do some things. And
Yeah, I honestly, there was a moment for me last summer where I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, should I like learn how to bartend? Like, I was looking for like, where can I make some cash? Like, and it wasn't, we weren't hurting. I mean, there wasn't like, it's just that I'm a long term like planner for things, and I felt like once I took a beat and I just sort of like thought about it and looked into things, um, it ended up being fantastic, right? I think I had more conversations with people than I had ever imagined. I think it allowed me that space to be more reflective. And I feel like right now, reflection is such a healthy thing to do
it
because I think
is.
we're such a society of go, 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 go. And if we don't pause and reflect, how are we ever going to like remember that we did that? Because I don't know about you, but I found myself like going so fast at times that I'll forget that I actually did something, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I did do that. Like, okay, check it out. So I feel like it was a reflective opportunity, that it was a gift.
What was that this time around? What was the process? Since there's
Mhm.
definitely, at least it feels like there's more people than at least in recent memory going through something similar right now. Uh,
Yeah.
what was that process like for you of applying for jobs? What did you find that like actually worked versus what didn't work?
Yeah. No, I will
What did
say,
the timeline look for you on some of those?
I think going into it, and I think both you and I know, just kind of being involved in the space for so long, like we
Yeah.
know that hiring somebody could take up to 3 months, right? I think
Hmm.
we had a starting point. So I knew in my mind, okay, it'll take at most 3 months. And at that time it was May, it was last summer. So I was like, I have a whole summer to like really figure this out. So I at least knew what I was looking at. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, I think I really pushed my networking out, to everybody, and I had a lot of conversations. Yeah, so networking. I even did some cold LinkedIn emails to former colleagues.
Yeah.
Just did some reach outs, and really kind of used my networking. That was one aspect of it. The other aspect was that I actually made it my full time job. I got up every day, went to my home office, um, and just was online probably maybe 5 to 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
I figured my kids at that time it was summer, so daycare. Um, I was like, you know what, this is my job. I am going to just be this full time candidate, and so that's really, I think, just being diligent about it, talking with employers, reaching out to recruiters. If there's a recruiter name on that LinkedIn posting, reach out to that recruiter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool because then once I landed, so right now being at Athletico, once I met the team there, and I was I had another employer that I was courting a bit as well at that same time, but I knew the life and the position at Athletico was probably more aligned with what my
Yeah.
skill set was, and this other employer was, I felt a bit like that other place that I that didn't
A
work
little,
out.
a
And I was
little,
like,
a little laid back.
a little too laid back, a little too, yeah. I again, meeting the leader of that, you've got to. I think it's really important when you do interview with your potential next boss, is you've got to make sure that there's a connection there. And I also say, like, don't be afraid to like request another meeting with that person if it felt like too formal and you need that more informal, just to see. I think that just also says like, hey, don't forget about me as a candidate. Like, I don't think that's too intrusive.
Was Athletico, which is where you are now, obviously, was that something that did you ultimately find it organically? Did you
Mm.
know somebody that knows somebody that said, "Hey, you should apply for this"? We at least know it's open. Like, what kind of ultimately led you that direction?
Yeah, it was actually the whole LinkedIn path I went. Like, I probably applied to. They were in the mix of about. I think I applied to about 50 jobs a month during that time. And I kept a list. I actually was very organized, kept a running list of all the
Same.
places.
I've got an Excel sheet going.
Oh my God, that's what I had. Yeah,
Yeah.
an Excel spreadsheet. Yep. And ended up kind of, applying with them. And then they didn't call me for, I think, a good like several weeks, and so it was one of those like, oh yeah, you were in that mix, right? But oddly enough, I did find out, and well, I knew about this, but a former colleague from my United days, so she was actually one of my last team members I worked with 21 years ago, was on the team that I'm currently on now. So we are, so the joke is we are reunited.
Ah, good. That speaks to my heart. That's a
I
great.
was going to say,
Great.
so you'd like that one.
Love that.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the couple things you pointed out. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because I think you and I view a lot of this stuff similar anyway. But like the not burning bridges, I think is huge no matter what. Like, and it's not even about like, oh, maybe someday this company will call me to come work for them again. Like it's just not it serves no purpose to like burn those bridges of you never know who somebody knows and
yeah.
it just doesn't do you like I think sometimes maybe for people it can feel good in the moment because you're angry and you just want to be like F everybody and get a little revenge or something, but
Yeah.
it just doesn't do any good. And like that network always, it either comes back to help you or it comes back to haunt you. And
Yeah.
I would much rather have it, come back to help you. And then
Hmm.
the the other piece you're hitting on there, which is just kind of ties into it anyway, but is just that networking portion of it. And this just popped in my head, but when you were talking about doing this is basically this was your full-time job.
Yep.
That's how I've been viewing it too. And a lot of that is, I think, just for my own like sanity, I guess. I don't know. It feels good to like be doing something all day long, and like a lot of people give the advice of like go take a vacation or go and I get that, but I just like me personally, I won't be able to relax if I know that like this is just hanging over my head. So I would much rather like just jump back into it and be busy and have conversations and work and then once I feel a little bit better about the situation of, it looks like things are gonna settle into place or whatever, then I can take a little bit of like a mental break.
Yeah.
But for me, like it's the same thing. Like I come down here and I set up my little workspace like it's a desk at work and make my coffee in the morning and sit down and just start plugging and scheduling stuff on the calendar and
Yeah.
it feels good. It feels productive.
Well, that's just it. I think it feels productive, and I think it does feel like we are so used to a routine. I mean, we're creatures of habit, right? We have our routine. We get up, we go to work, we want to make a difference, and because we're in the space that we're in, I think we're in the space because we want to help people.
Right.
And so when we don't have that, it can be disarming, and then you just feel like, uh oh. So doing something to fill that void, I think, like what you're talking about, and just showing up every day and saying like, look, I'm trying, I'm doing what I can, is important rather than, I can't imagine it any other way, just sitting there and waiting like for someone to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, we came across your LinkedIn profile
Yeah.
and you look awesome. It's not how it works,
No,
we
that feels like an impossible ask.
oh,
Right.
exactly. I don't, yeah. And it's like if I don't try, if I don't do these things, I don't know. I feel like that's missed opportunity. People, if I don't know if you have somebody else to talk to that maybe knows what we do or knows your value, that can give you some of that boosting like I needed. That went a long way for me. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
don't want to undermine that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's probably the other reason I've just been having as many conversations as I have is it's always you get I mean I'm getting a whole smattering of advice and opinions and some of it's super helpful, some of it's not as much, but like it's good to hear all of it and not just hear like specifically what I want to hear, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's good to hear everything, but yeah, I've definitely had some of those conversations too where like people I never would have even expected to like reach out to me have reached out or people I haven't heard of in forever that are like I saw this and like been just kind of silently following along with your career or like the stuff you post on LinkedIn or whatever. And they're just like, I love your positivity and I wanted to talk to you. And it's like, it's cool to know that just like the stuff you do has made a difference. Like the stuff that I'm passionate about that a lot of times I just do because it's fun to do. Like this conversation, like it's just fun to do. Um, but then you kind of find out that like for other people, maybe they're in a shitty situation or feeling
Yeah.
even worse about themselves, and it's like you inadvertently help them too, and it's I guess that's why we're in this learning development field to begin with, but
Well, I
yeah,
will say, I think you are somebody who has made an impact, at least like in the time that we got to work together on the board, and I've seen you. Um, I think you're somebody that people want to follow. So I think you just have like that. And I know you built it up. I know you worked hard at it, but you do also have a natural tendency to lead. And I feel like you are, and you're going to do great in your next
appreciate
role
it.
as a leader. And because you kind of lead us all through your stories and your passions on LinkedIn, I think that's partially why people will reach out to you. I think same thing. I was very empathetic to your situation, and I was also shocked. I was like, "What is what?" So I immediately also wanted to help, and I think to your point, like that's where I often find myself. I got wind of a friend um, who is also in our field.
Yeah,
Um, she is, I found out shockingly, she's been out of work for, I think, either coming up on a year or close to it. And I was utterly surprised. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? So again, that could be filled with other things too. I
of
don't
course.
know the story, but I, that leaves a mark with me. It's like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
what can we do? And plus, I don't want to be too intrusive, but you opened it up, and I think kudos to you because you did open it up, and you're having more of these conversations, and I think this is the
Yeah.
time to do it.
I mean, it's funny too because I even find my like like I said, I wasn't the only one that went through it, and I'm certainly not the only one going through it from a broader scale outside of just my former company. But I still find myself also like I see somebody that's looking for work or something, I still want to reach out and be like, any way I can help? Like as I'm sitting here, like I'm the one that need like I also need to find myself a job, but you just
Well,
can't help it, you know? Like you just want to connect
you
and
do. But you know why? Because you're looking at jobs all the time. And then you might find a job that you're like, that gets in your feed and you're like, well, this isn't exactly, but I know somebody who this
yeah.
might be. I think that's partially why it comes to you that way. At least that's what it did for me as well. That I guess if you could put a bow on a situation that you were in, that would be the bow.
It was,
Um,
and I mean the number of like for like trainees from those classes and then just like classes I trained before and stuff that have also reached out and even I even had a kid reach out the other day that was like he had just graduated in our from our June class.
yeah,
Like, thanks so much for all your posting and like positivity on LinkedIn. He's like, it's been really inspiring and like motivating for me when I come in and if it's like a day where I don't feel like making as many calls and then I see you like being so positive out there, he's like, it really motivates me. And I'm like, that's the reason we like do this stuff, because
yeah. I
stuff
think
like
it's
that.
and I think it's courageous. Like having these conversations, it's about being courageous, and I think vulnerability is something that is still. I think I don't think you could be courageous without having vulnerability in this type of environment. I feel like um, it's it's something that's like relatively new. And right now I'm involved in a lot of leadership development, working through how do we put all of that into our designs, and how are we
Yeah.
educating people who may have, especially people who have certain beliefs, and how do you convince them that this is actually okay? It's a different way of
Gonna have
working.
feelings and
Yeah, we're human. We have feelings. Putting that out there is okay. I think to me it also connects to trust, and people, to me it seems like a lot of people trust you, and look to you as like a great resource, right? A go-to, maybe outside of your current scope from what you were doing.
yeah,
I think that's what I'm finding myself teaching towards. It's like it's all got to point to trust. It's super foundational. Thank you to Patrick Lencioni and that model of
mhm,
five dysfunctions. But I think if we had looked at, if we start there and we look at, what builds trust, well, it's having those courageous conversations. It's being vulnerable at the right times. It's, being committed. And I think you're demonstrating your commitment to the cause. helping others in this space, which I can see you're because you do care and you're passionate and you want to help others and let people know, hey, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay to be this way. And there is another side. And sometimes that other side is better than you could have ever imagined.
love that. I think that is a perfect note to end on because I think that was great advice. Well, thanks for doing this. It was, I mean, A, thanks for, agreeing to also let people see you be vulnerable about some things, but B, it's just great to catch up with you. So,
Yeah, same, same. Are you still the prez? I think you are, right?
yeah, I am still the prez. By the way, if anybody doesn't know, we're talking about ATD Chai, ATD Chicago. Um, I don't think we actually said the name of the organization we were
We
talking about.
never did.
Yeah. It's our Association for Talent Development, our local chapter here in Chicago. If you're looking for ways to literally just network and meet like-minded professionals, I can't really think of a better way. It's been amazing for that. So
It really has. I think it's a great organization. I tell folks, hey, it's really your time. It costs nothing to join, and it's a resume builder, it's a skill builder, and you meet some really cool people.
yeah, great. So well, we'll obviously catch up more and keep in
Yeah,
touch. But thanks again. It was amazing to hear your side of the story too of some of the things you've been through. So I appreciate
yeah.
it.
Well, thank you. I think you're amazing. Keep going. You're gonna land. I think on both feet stronger than I think you ever could imagine. You've
Appreciate
got
it.
so much to offer that things you probably haven't even tapped into yet. But lean into those things that you are good at. Don't be short sighted. Like
Yeah,
really, this is your chance to kind of be selective. And so I encourage you to do that. But yeah, you're gonna do great.
thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. And yeah, reach out again.
Okay, I will.
All
Talk soon.
right.
All
Okay.
right. Bye.
Bye.